Did the Green Bay Packers and Miami Dolphins overpay for Jordan Love and Tua Tagovailoa? We talk about that and so much more coming up next here on Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On NFL podcast, your daily NFL podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher. I'm the host of Locked On Ravens and one of the many NFL experts here on our network, the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today, making Locked On NFL your first listen every day and a part of your day in general as well. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes a video form on YouTube where you can like and subscribe to the channel. Also in audio form wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can follow along, subscribe over there as well. Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sportsing like you want them to, but this summer FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a booster or bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. What a weekend. What a weekend in the NFL. We got quarterback contracts coming in every single angle. Two huge ones, Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers and Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins. We're going to be talking in the first part of the show with Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers. We had Peter on last week, and I'm talking about, well, Kenny Clark. Well, is Jordan Love next? And he certainly was, becomes the highest paid quarterback. We'll talk about that in the first part of the show. Then we'll move on to Miami. Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins will join us to talk about Tua's perspective, and then we will get into another Patriots extension. Mike Debate of Locked On Patriots will join us to talk about Jabril Peppers and more. So let's talk about Jordan Love's extension first. Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers. The Green Bay Packers, they signed Jordan Love to a massive contract extension. Here to talk about that with me and more Packers is Peter Bukowski, the host of Locked On Packers. And Peter, long time no see. Obviously, we talked last week about the Kenny Clark extension, and you were on this show saying you would not be shocked if, one, Jordan Love became the highest paid quarterback, and two, if that happened sooner rather than later. We get the numbers in here. What were your initial reactions and thoughts of the deal in general?
Well, my initial reaction was, you can see obviously where the push and pull was on this. Athletes First, who negotiated the Tua Tagovailoa deal and the Jordan Love deal. I would not normally name check agents, but they have come out and they have said, we want these quarterbacks to be getting 4-year deals. And so I thought Jordan Love could have pushed for more money if he had agreed to a 5th year. Like, I think Green Bay would have gone to 56+ million, a true average annual value reset of the market. I think the Packers would have wanted that extra 5th year on the extension. So you have 6 total years, including 2024. But the give back for that 4th year was to say, okay, we'll sit here at 55. We'll hit the Trevor Lawrence deal at the top of the market. The Packers also don't like to put a lot of future guarantees in their deals. You look at something like the Jalen Hurts deal, the Joe Burrow deal. They've got guaranteed money, real guaranteed money, year 2, year 3, not just practical guarantees, fully guaranteed. No doubt this money is going to the player guarantees. The Packers instead said, we will make you the highest paid player ever at signing, $75 million at signing, which they can then spread out over the life of the contract. And there is a 4th year that balloons in cap hit. That's the interesting thing, and I'm sure we're gonna get to. I don't want to spoil the how do they pay for their roster moving forward part, but because I'm sure that's coming. But this signing bonus allows them to spread that money over. Like, he only counts less than $21 million on the cap this year, and doesn't count over $40 million on the cap until the 4th year, the 3rd year of the extension of this deal. So, I mean, that's a long window in the NFL. 3 years of cheap, inexpensive-ish quarterback play when you have a top-of-market type quarterback, that's pretty good business.
It is, and we'll just get right to it. You put it out there. Look, I think there is obviously a shift when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal versus a quarterback on a big contract of how you can build out your roster. You obviously can't keep everybody, and you obviously have to hit more on your draft picks and your veteran minimum type signings. Sure. So for you, Peter, how do the Packers build this roster out around Jordan Love now? And what does that plan look like to you?
Yeah, it's a lot of the same. This is a draft and develop team by nature. So yes, you have to hit on your draft picks, but that's what this team has done from time immemorial. Kevin, let me take you back. 2018, Aaron Rodgers, ever heard of him? He signs the biggest contract in NFL history. In 2019, that offseason, before that 2019 season, Brian Gutekunst goes out and he spends big money on Zadarius Smith, on Preston Smith, on Billy Turner, and Adrian Amos. That team, that core that they assembled with Aaron Rodgers on the biggest contract in NFL history has 3 consecutive 13-win seasons. Now, did they win the Super Bowl? No. But that was not because of roster construction. That was because, like David Bakhtiari, key injury. You have the special teams meltdown in 2021. So there's a lot of reasons why this happened. Mike Pettin in 2019, defensive performance that would have gotten most coaches fired. Eventually he gets fired after the 2020 defensive performance. They're going to keep doing it this way. And let's also not forget, Kevin, last year, the Packers became the youngest team ever to win a playoff game. I know they were only 9-8, but they go in and they pull Dallas's pants down in front of God and everybody. And in an absolute demolition of a 12-win Cowboys team with $40 million allocated to a quarterback rehabbing an Achilles injury in Egypt or God knows where, with Aaron Rodgers in New York. They were able to assemble that team, a team that now comes back this year. You add Xavier McKinney, you replace Aaron Jones with Josh Jacobs. And so they've been able to make real acquisitions here. There's still cap space left. They still have, if they wanted to go out and sign Justin Simmons tomorrow, they have the equity to go do that. So this really, in the short run anyway, does not change that much. I think the thing that will become difficult is, like they have all these pass catchers. You and I have talked about this off air and on. Well, what does that pecking order do in terms of contracts? What does Christian Watson want in a year? What does Romeo Doubs want in a year? What does Dontavian Wicks want in 2 years? Do they want a middling deal to stay wide receiver 3 on the Packers and try and win championships? Or do they want someone to pay them like a wide receiver 1 somewhere, or, a 1B or a 2A, where they could get more targets and potentially more money? Rarely do teams have too many good players, but you do run into situations where, especially successful teams, and you see this in Baltimore, where you have a guy who has a really good season and gets paid off that really good season, where it turns out, they were probably a product of a lot of really good players around them and a really good scheme. Like, we'll see, Geno Stone, Patrick Queen, what do they do in new situations where, they don't have the same sort of talent around them. They don't have the schematic advantages around them. That'll be, I think, the harder line to walk for the Packers moving forward. There's always money in the banana stand, and Russ Ball, who handles the purse strings over at 1265 Lombardi, is one of the best at the business at doing this. They have not let a player walk who they really wanted to keep, ever. It just doesn't happen because they figure it out. You can always make it work. There's just sacrifices that you may have to offset it with.
Right. And I think too, Peter, and you kind of alluded to it there a little bit. I'm sure you have seen the opinions of, well, you're paying Jordan Love all this money after what is one good season and all he's overpaid, he's this, he's that. I want you to respond to that, to the people who are saying that Jordan Love is overpaid here. He only had one good season, and this was a massive mistake by the Packers. What do you have to say to that?
So this is different than if a rookie came in and had one good season or half of one good season and got paid, right? Because Jordan Love was here in 2022. And they've seen him now for 3 years in the building. They've seen the progress that he's made. They see how he practices every day. They see the way his teammates respond. So they have more information than you or I do from the outside. Yes, it's one good year of production, but a year in which in the second half, and I gave you this stat last week, if you look at the productivity, the positive plays and the negative plays combined, the touchdown to interception ratio in the second half of the season, the only other players to ever have an 8-game stretch that good in their first year as starter is Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes were MVPs those seasons. So that's the level that he played at. You can say, it's half of one good season. Okay. But it was so good that he ended up 4th in EPA per dropback last year. Over the course of the season, 6th in DVOA, sixth in DYIR, any of the advanced metrics, say Jordan Love was comfortably a top 10 quarterback last season. You don't fluke into seasons like he had. The history says you just don't do that. And so the Packers, they have more information than everyone else. That doesn't mean they're right, but they have more information than everyone else. And the last thing I'll say about this, Kevin, 2008, fewer than 8 games into the 2008 season, the Packers had replaced a future no doubt Hall of Famer, a 3-time MVP who left on inglorious terms with this young unproven player who had barely played. They gave him a 5-year extension before Halloween of his first year as a starter. That guy was Aaron Rodgers, of course. If the Packers had given that extension to Jordan Love 8 games into the season, it would have seemed crazy. But if he had had 8 games like he had the end of the year in the first 8 games of the season, and he got that extension, I don't think anyone would have blinked an eye. We would have just gone, oh my God, the Packers have done this again. And I hate to break it to the rest of the NFC, especially the NFC North. The Packers have done it again.
Peter is awesome. And for more on Peter's work, check him out over at Locked On Packers and Locked On Sports Today, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up with the second part of the show, we'll move to a different high-paid quarterback. Tua Tagovailoa gets this deal. Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins is joining us to talk about that and more. So we'll get into that coming up next year on Locked On NFL. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. At FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So in the MLB, here in Baltimore, Gunnar Henderson is certainly in the MVP conversation. You want those MVP odds, head over to FanDuel. Also for football, the Ravens and Chiefs open up the season, and the Ravens open up that game as 2.5-point underdogs on FanDuel. So if you want that line, get over to FanDuel as well. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. We're back for our second segment, Locked On NFL. Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you on this Monday. Again, really appreciate everybody tuning in today and making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day. Be sure to make your second listen Locked On Sports Today with Peter Bukowski, who we just heard from. Peter does a great job, obviously, covering the Packers, but also does a great job covering all sports all the time over on Locked On Sports Today, so be sure to check that out. Now, we talked about Jordan Love and his extension. Now we're going to move on to Tua Tagovailoa, and Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins will be joining us to talk about this from Miami's perspective and from Tua's perspective too, so let's get into it now. The Miami Dolphins paid Tua Tagovailoa a massive contract. And again, in the world of quarterbacks getting paid, Tua, one of the latest in that conversation. Here to talk about that with me is Kyle Krabs, the host of Locked On Dolphins. And Kyle, I know that a lot of people were wondering when this deal would get done, what this deal would end up looking like for Tua. Well, Miami gets their man, but on the surface level, there is the base value. But underneath that, there are a lot of different bells and whistles within this contract. So for you, when you got the notification, you kind of got to dive into this deal. How do you think Miami did, and how do you think Tua did?
I think there are wins to be had on both sides when you consider Tua Tagovailoa was facing the prospect, if they couldn't hammer out a deal, of playing on the 5th-year option and then potentially facing a franchise tag and then potentially another franchise tag. That's a nice 3-year window of lump sum money, but it doesn't give you long-term security or any veil of long-term security. Tua's contract, as far as the first 3 years through 2026, which is what in all likelihood is like the minimum window. There are ways that this contract can go longer and shorter than that, but in all likelihood, you look at 24, 25, and 26. Tua comes away with $35 million more than 5th-year option and 2 franchise tags. So the fact that he got more earnings than that, and a significant amount of more earnings than that, I think is a nice win for Tua. He gets a $20 million pay raise this year versus the 5th-year option. There's injury guarantees in a lot of his money. So that was the question with him, was injuries. That has been afforded to him. If you are injured, you are still guaranteed your guarantees. I think you look at it from the Dolphins' perspective, and some of the stipulated windows is one area where I think there's a strong argument for when some of the money guarantees. There's effectively a $3 million buyout effectively for 2027, where after 26 they can pay him the $3 million, but the rest of that salary that is going to be guaranteed for 2027 doesn't guarantee until March of 2027. Usually a lot of that money vests a year in advance. So there's a delay on that 2027 vested salary. And then I think the other thing from the Dolphins, I know everybody looks at the AAV of these contracts or the annual average of them, and your minds just explode, right? Because the numbers just keep going up, but they're not going up as fast as the salary cap is going up. So I think the other win for the Dolphins is that this contract from an AAV perspective actually an AAV percentage of cap. So whatever the average is of your contract when you sign, what percent of that year's salary cap is it, so that you know moving forward. It only ranks 12th in the NFL amongst starting quarterbacks. So contracts that were signed for less money, like Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert, their AAV might be smaller, but the salary cap was significantly smaller when those investments were made last year. So that percentage of cap for Tua checking in 12th behind Love, Lawrence, Prescott, Watson, Murray, Hurts, Mahomes, Jackson, Herbert, Allen, and Burrow. I don't think anybody would bat an eye hearing that if that was the hierarchy of your top 12 contracts. It's just the growth rate of the salary cap has facilitated the raw data and raw numbers that's going to the players at a degree that I think everybody's just a little surprised every time it comes up.
Right. And this is the market of an NFL quarterback today, is the salary cap continues to go up, which means other numbers will continue to go up too. But Kyle, in your estimation, based off of the player that Tua is and what you have seen from him out of his Dolphins career so far and the contract that he got and everything you just talked to us about, do you think that this was a just right deal for both sides? Was it an overpay on Miami's side? Do you think Miami got a steal of a deal here? What is your overall view of the contract?
Yeah, I think you can look at the $55 million AAV that Trevor Lawrence and Jordan Love got, and Tua's agents at Athletes First could have had a very legitimate argument to go to Miami and say, look, the production over the past 2 years versus Jordan Love, who only started one season, and Trevor Lawrence, who Tua has outperformed statistically speaking, not necessarily if you remove him from his offense or you look at the physical traits and how dummy proof they are to build an offense, a hypothetical offense around that doesn't exist. Athletes First, I think, would have had a firm argument to build around that AAV should have been higher. And as the insiders kind of got around this deal is going to happen, it's just a question of how long is it going to take to get done, and what is the dollars going to look like? The two names that were most frequently invoked were Jared Goff and Joe Burrow, or Trevor Lawrence after the Trevor Lawrence deal got done. And his AAV checks in 0.1 in front of Jared Goff. So it landed in between. I think that's the win, but I think it is probably something that's for a skill-specific player that does have players around him that help to multiply the things that he does do well. Not getting a market reset contract from an AAV perspective is probably the appropriate place to land.
Right. And I think as well with who he is and what the Dolphins now need from him with him on this bigger contract, do you, Kyle, believe that he can be the guy to lead the Dolphins to where they want to go? And what do you need to see out of him now that he does have a big deal under his belt?
Yeah, I think there was meat on the bone last year for how the offense was run as far as taking what the defense gives you. I think there was obviously the running game element is there. Obviously the offensive line got torn up at the end of the year last year, and their skill players were banged up at the end of the season as well. But ultimately, at the end of the day, through all of that, it feels like between adding Odell Beckham as another third down option, adding Jonnu Smith as a tight end who they're appearing to, based off of everything that we've heard with media availabilities, look at to be a player who can, against zone coverage, underneath, get the ball and help create yards when there's shallow completions to be had. They want to be more efficient with the passing game instead of, hey, there's this really tight window with this elite receiver, I'm going to try to slot it in there. And a lot of times I can slot it in there, but there's going to be other times where there's defenders that disrupt the timing of it and it's not there at all. And we really don't have anything else we feel confident banking on. So it maybe won't be as top heavy long-term, but I do think the complement of skills around Tua, they've tweaked to try to help facilitate that process of how he sees it and how he thinks about it, to encourage, if you get drop 7 and everybody's 27 yards downfield in zone coverage, get it to your check down for your tight end, let him break a tackle. Let's get 21 yards and go for it on 3rd and 6 instead of looking at 3rd and 28 or whatever example arbitrarily I could come up with.
Kyle is great with the Dolphins insight. For more on Kyle, check him out over at Locked On Dolphins, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up in the final part of the show, Jabril Peppers gets extended. The Patriots get another guy under contract. Mike DeBate will join us to talk about that and more coming up next year on Locked On NFL. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. And for me, I love going to MLB games during the summer. I've had a lot of great memories growing up from going to games, particularly the Orioles, obviously here in Baltimore. And I try to make a couple more each and every year, trying to get down to Camden Yards a couple times per season. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball. It makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last minute deals, all them prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And on the Gametime app, obviously in Baltimore, a bunch of big games coming up for the Orioles, so you can find tickets for that over on Gametime. And obviously with the Ravens coming up, you can find tickets for those games on Gametime as well. And the Gametime app has a bunch of awesome features, my favorite being last minute deals. You can save it with 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. Plus, the app is just really easy to navigate and easy to use as well. And other features include flash deals, zone deals, all-in pricing, seat views, lowest price guarantee, Gametime ticket coverage, and so much more. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, spell LOCKED on NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime to the last-minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. We are back rounding out Locked On NFL. Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you here. Opening up the week here. We do 5 days a week of NFL content here on Locked On NFL. So if you prefer to listen to us in video form or audio form, it is the same show either which way. Now, Mike DeBate of Locked On Patriots will join us to talk about Jabril Peppers and some pretty scary Christian Barmore news as well. So all things Patriots with Mike coming up now. The New England Patriots love their extensions, and they have agreed to another one, this time with Jabril Peppers. Here to talk about that with me and a lot more Patriots is Mike DeBate, the host of Locked On Patriots. And Mike, I know you know the drill here. You've been on plenty of times this offseason, and I love it because I love your insight on the Patriots and everything that's going on there in New England. But Peppers is a guy, obviously was trying to find his way in the NFL, found a home in New England. With this deal, can you talk about the specifics of the contract and whether this is a good deal for both sides? Or do you think one made out better than the other?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of feels like Groundhog Day, doesn't it, Kevin? Well, we're talking about another extension again. And it's usually the same type of circumstances. Core guys that perform well on the field, great locker room presence, leadership abilities, and they find themselves getting extended. Now, there are two guys on this team that I believe also deserve their fair share, and I hope they get that before the Patriots break camp or at least into the season because they both deserve it. We'll mention those guys in a little bit. But the specifics on the Peppers deal, I think, benefit both sides. It's clearly a great deal for Jabril, no question about it. This is a 3-year extension, a base value of $24 million, worth up to $30 million with incentives. And in my opinion, that puts the ball in Jabril's court to be able to earn those because last year, I believe he put up Pro Bowl numbers. I actually think he should have been a Pro Bowler. 78 total tackles, 8 pass breakups, 1 sack, 1 interception, forced a fumble and recovered it, played in 15 of 17 games for the Pats last year. Durability, prowess on the field, he brings it all to the table. So I like this deal for Jabril. I liked it for the New England Patriots. They have the cap space to do it. They have the wherewithal. Get these guys, keep these guys in-house because that tandem, that safety tandem of Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers is now going to be one very formidable unit in that defensive backfield. Whoever wants to go over the middle on those guys, good luck to them.
And I know that, Mike, with Jabril, It was an interesting career up till he got to New England. A lot of people are wondering, what is his real NFL role? And he certainly found that in New England. But can you kind of dive into who he is and who he has been to the Patriots and what you expect? Obviously, Gerard Mayo being the head coach, there's not going to be so much turnover to the point where it's completely different. But what is he to this Patriots team?
Well, I think coming into New England, I think a lot of people, myself included, figured that the Pats were getting another hard hitter, a guy that can get out there, get physical, mix it up, and really, I think, add a little bit of swagger back to that defensive backfield. Arguably, maybe that they had been missing, since the retirement of Rodney Harrison. They hadn't had a guy like that was really just an enforcer in that defensive backfield. But Jabril has been so much more. He's been a versatile weapon, a guy that can align all over the field. And he's done that for the Patriots since walking through the door. He's played snaps at free safety, at the strong. He's played wideout corner. He's played slot corner on occasion. He's been a hybrid linebacker. He's gone up, taken some snaps along the defensive line. He's at his most comfortable when he's in the box. And I think that's where you're going to see the Patriots continue to utilize his services. But the fact that he can be versatile all over the place really helps guys like Kyle Duggar when they want him to focus and double down on maybe covering a tight end or a backfield receiver. Jabrill can cover the other areas, and he's got the prowess to do it. So he's been versatile, and he's also been a great teammate, someone that's out there showing guys where they need to be, how they need to be executing certain plays. Those are the types of guys the New England Patriots love to employ. Really, any team in the NFL loves to employ those guys. But the Patriots have a certain MO when it comes to identifying leaders on the field and off. Jabril Peppers fits that. And I think that's something that the Patriots considered when they gave him this extension.
Now, I did want to address this as well, Mike, because this news came out about 30 minutes before we hit record here, and it is an unfortunate and scary situation with defensive lineman Christian Barmore. Can you kind of go into those details? Because obviously, first and foremost, health is what matters in this situation.
Oh, without question. And it is a scary situation. And obviously, your first thought is for Christian's well-being, his long-term health and his short-term health. Thankfully, the Patriots training staff was very diligent on this. Kevin, we talked a little bit before we came on the air today about something just not feeling right with Christian's participation thus far in training camp. Barely made it through the first practice, and he's been very limited, if not absent from the field for the last couple of days, and was not out there on his 25th birthday on Sunday to take part in practice. And that really, I think, kind of raised everyone's eyebrows. And of course, Sunday evening, the news coming out that he is being treated for blood clots. The good news here is that he is being treated at Mass General Brigham Hospital, which is one of the best facilities in the country for hematology and clotting disorders and things of that nature. So hopefully he'll make a full and complete recovery, and that's what we're hoping for right now. But it's a big blow to the New England Patriots, mostly from a personal standpoint because of how well liked Christian is on this team and how well respected that he is. And our thoughts are with his family and with him, and hopefully that recovery will take place. But as you know as well as anyone, Kevin, this is a next man up league. This is a, time goes on, life goes on type league. And it is a big hole that the Patriots are going to have to fill in that defensive front.
Mike is great. And if you want more Patriots insight, be sure to check out Mike over at Locked On Patriots, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On NFL. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Be sure to, again, follow along in audio form, subscribe over there, like this video, subscribe in video form as well. Coming up tomorrow, more NFL content with the Tuesday host. So be sure to stay tuned. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On NFL.